Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So glad you could join us again for the Grief Healing Telesummit. Top experts share their best holistic healing methods to transform grief into healing and living again. I'm Chelsea Hansen, your host, founder of With Sympathy Gifts and Keepsakes, as well as Global Grace, the World Association of Spiritual Grief Healing. Today we have a very special guest for you, Tabitha Jane. Tabitha is a certified coach and the author of Thriving Loss, Move Beyond Grief to a Place of Peace, Passion, and Purpose. And she's also the author of Grief, What Happens After the Funeral. Today, Tabby helps inspirational women transform past trauma into a life and business that helps and inspires others. Welcome, Tabby.
Thank you very much, Chelsea. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and tell us, where are you talking to us from today?
I am currently talking to you from the little island of Ibiza in the Mediterranean Sea just now. So I have just moved here, and it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Fun all round, which is awesome.
It sounds lovely. Well, I'm talking to everyone from Wisconsin, where we have very cold weather, all the below zero weather. So no fun, that is for sure. Yeah, and we're so thrilled to have you. Your book is one of my favorites on the topic of grief. And when I say grief, I also mean moving beyond it to find that place of passion and purpose. So it's written lovely, and for those of you who haven't gotten the book yet, both grief professionals and people who are going through the bereavement process, I think you'll find it very helpful. Yeah, so Tabitha, tell us basically how you got started in your journey, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, my journey starts when I was 22, and when I was 22, my 17-year-old brother Peter died suddenly in a car accident, and it was probably the most confusing, disorientating, overwhelming time period of my life. I literally had no idea what to expect about grief, and it was kind of ironic because I'd just been reflecting recently, just before my brother died, on the fact that my grandparents were getting old and that one day they were going to die, and what would that mean for me? My grandparents now, 12 years later, are still alive. So I'd been contemplating death, but to actually have somebody so young and somebody who I was not expecting to die, just completely overthrew me. And I did what I think any bookworm would do. I went to basically books and read about grief and figured out, well, what am I going through? Because there were so many emotions, so many feelings, so many things happening that I didn't understand, and I desperately wanted to understand. And also, I wanted to know, because one of the things that I came across after my brother died was that so many people were talking about how this pain would go on, and it was really challenging and it was really difficult. And for me, the thought of having a life sentence of grief made me even more upset, because I thought this cannot be the purpose of life. So I did all this research, and out of that I got the idea to set up a charity to help young adults affected by bereavement in Scotland, because I found that there was a lack of support at the time for young people like me. So I went and had no idea what I was doing, but went and set this charity up, and it ran for 6 years. We offered one-to-one support services, online support. We had a drop-in evening, and the charity did well. It got recognised. It was part of a national documentary that went out into schools, so we were helping schools. And I did this for about 6 years, but what I realised is that I'd actually put part of my life on hold. So I was sitting there one day, thinking, what am I going to do? I feel trapped and I feel miserable, and I know that I've still got this feeling of loss around my own brother's death. And randomly I came across an opportunity to go out to Spain and do some volunteering. And my brother's nickname was Pedro, and Pedro is Spanish for Peter. So I took this as a sign, and I went out to Spain. And for the first time after my brother's death, I really did that deep transformative work whereby I'd done a lot of work already, but I went even deeper, and I really went into transforming my grief and looking at the best way to do it. And round about that time, I came across coaching, which completely blew me away. Spent a lot of time in nature, and realized that I wanted to get back into coaching from this new perspective, and share what I'd learned about going even deeper into that transformation of really moving beyond the grief, of finding that place of peace, passion, and purpose. So I set out and set up a coaching practice and went back working with people, developed a process, worked with them, and then finally wrote the book Thriving Loss, Move Beyond Grief to a Place of Peace, Passion, and Purpose. And wanted to help other people who, like me, had experienced just that overwhelming disorientation, and really were looking for a way to rebuild their lives, move beyond grief, and find meaning and purpose afterwards.
Yeah, that's so awesome, because when you're in the middle of grief, like you're saying, you're so disoriented, overwhelmed, you don't really think that possibility might be there, the peace, purpose, passion. So that was so wise of you to realize when you're in the throes of it, there's got to be a better way. And then to even go further to share that transformative process that you learned with others. And I think that's what you'll be going through with us next, that process that you developed. And I really enjoyed reading it or understanding it, because I like nature as well. So, are you ready to share that process with us now?
I would love to share that process. So the process I call the tree of transformation, because I found a lot of solace in nature, and I realized that when we look at the way a tree grows and the way a tree thrives, we can learn a lot from it. And it made sense. And as I worked with other people, it worked with them. And basically the first part of the process is really to get to grips with grief, to know where you are now, but also know where you want to be. Now, that is going to be different for everybody. If you've been recently bereaved and you are struggling to get through a day, then maybe your intention is, I just want to be able to get through the day. If you're in a different place, maybe then your intention will change, and it will be, I want to remember my loved one without it hurting so much. I want to remember the good times. So it's important to get some form of intention that feels right to you. And once you know where you want to go, what you're moving towards to, you really need to look at your roots, your foundation. And this is where we create space for grief to flow, because one of the things I've realized in Western society is that we are so busy all the time, and this busyness can actually keep our ability to process our emotions at bay, whether we're watching TV and distracting ourselves through TV or through food, if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not eating properly, not resting properly. Because one of the things about grief is that it's a physical part of grief as well. And if we're not nourishing our bodies, then we do not have the strength for the emotions and to actually handle that. And once we've looked at the foundations and said, okay, how am I taking care of myself? How am I creating that space for the grief to flow? Then you move into the trunk, which is really about the emotions and feeling the flow of grief. And the thing with our emotions is they can be so incredibly scary and overwhelming, and we don't know how to deal with them. And it's really important for us to be able to recognize that when it comes to emotions, there's absolutely no right or wrong emotion. So many of us, and I know that I experience this as well, we can get caught up in guilt about how we think about something, and then, or even that we're enjoying life and then we feel guilty because we shouldn't be enjoying life because somebody close to us has died. So it's really being able to sit and be comfortable with the emotions and just let them pass through us. Because as we move through that emotional intensity, we then come into our brand sheet, which is knowing who we want to be, because grief challenges us, it challenges our world, and we have to recreate a new sense of who we are after we've gone through a bereavement. And that might be exploring new activities, doing things that we maybe wanted to do in the past but we haven't wanted to do. So a lot of people that I've worked with and spoken to have talked about creativity, how they've actually got in touch with their creative side. This is sometimes where it comes out that some people are really interested in sitting thinking, well, how can I help other people? Part of my identity is maybe talking about what I've gone through. And as we look and we redefine our sense of self and who we are after our bereavement, the energy flows up into our leaves, which is basically cultivating an ongoing relationship with our loved ones. Because one of the things that can hold us back is we think that because the person is physically gone, and when people talk about moving forward with our life, we think that we have to leave our loved ones behind. And I ended up, when I was at university, doing a dissertation on this, looking at this continuing relationship. And what's really interesting is we all have a continuing relationship with our loved ones. And we have to redefine what this relationship is, how we're going to keep them part of our life as we move forward. And it was really beautiful because I was actually speaking to my grandmother, who's 91, just over Christmas time. And she was telling me, it's the first time she opened up, but she was telling me how she still talks to her parents every day, and they have been dead for 40, 50 years. And I thought that this was such a beautiful example, Chelsea, because we don't think of this. And it really touched me, and she told me this wonderful story about how she had got these cheap placemats for the table because they had a man dressed the way her father used to dress. And just by having them on her table, it reminded of her father, and she felt close to him. And I thought, go Granny. I mean, what a beautiful example. And it really amazes me that, she's telling me this 12 years after my brother died and not at the time. But for me, that was a beautiful example. And I know for myself as well that I still have a relationship with my brother. It's still part of my life. And we really need to figure out how do we do that. And once we do that, we're able to move forward in a way that allows us to bring our loved ones with us, whether we have rituals, whether we are just talking to them every day, whether we are focusing on the memories and the good times that we had. Because when we are able to have this continuing relationship, we are actually able to move into the fruit of the tree, which is basically finding the good in loss. There are always good things that come both from having the person in our life, and this might be hard to hear, but even coming from their death. And if anybody is listening and you're really at the early stages, that might sound incredibly, almost as if it's impossible. And what's been really interesting is this is a later stage. This is not something that happens as soon as you've lost somebody. But as you realize that you've developed an appreciation, you've rediscovered yourself, you've found your new strength, you see ways in which you're being supported by your loved ones, but also you're finding courage to do things that you've maybe never done before. So you're growing. And it's that growth that we have, because if we're not growing, we're staying stuck. And if you are listening to this call today, then I know that you do not want to stay stuck. You are wanting to find a way through the pain of bereavement to actually move beyond it so that you can start enjoying life again. And then those bits, the root, the trunk, the branches, the leaves, and the fruit, the last seventh thing that you need to remember is that you need to take care of yourself and you need to keep working on this, because there's always going to be a time where grief might come back up again and catch you unawares, and you think you're doing really well and then you have a really bad day. And what I found when I was working with my clients and through my own experiences, sometimes we neglect to take care of ourselves. So if we're feeling really tired and we haven't eaten properly, then it's easier for the emotions to overwhelm us. When we are feeling that we don't know who we are after our bereavement, then sometimes emotions can come up again over that. When we feel that we are unable to have a connection with somebody, then that's when the feeling of loss comes back again. So it's realizing that this is an ongoing process, and the more that you keep on working with these 5 aspects, the more that you are going to be able to move forward. And what was really interesting is as I connected with other people, and as I worked through really transforming my own grief, is I reached this place where not a lot of people actually reach, whereby they can feel so connected. And I say they, so let me take it back to myself. I feel so connected to my brother. He's such a part of my life. Everything that I do now has been inspired by him, and I know that I am living my life as a tribute to him, but also acknowledging the gift that I still have life. And I do not have anything close to the same levels of grief as what I had before. In actual fact, when I think about my brother, what first comes to mind is love and gratitude that he was part of my life. And that place of being able to sit and realize that your loved one is still there, that you've lost nothing, you still have them in your life, also in a dramatically different way, that you're still connected to that love. For me, that's a really beautiful place to be in, and helping other people to get to that place, and even hearing from other people how they've reached that place as well, because it's not something when we hear about grief that we actually even think that it's possible.
That is so awesome, because really that's the theme of a lot of the speakers we're having on the telesummit. Because for me personally as well, I think I've reached that place as well, because I have connection with my mother and my father. Both of my parents are deceased. But it took me 10 years after I lost my mom to find out, wow, this really could happen. So I'm curious, how did you figure this out, like with your intuition? Like, for people who are early in the process. Now we're giving people the tools to do this, you know, through your process and other people's help. But I'm so curious how you figured that out. So tell us.
Yeah, I would love to share this because this was the most powerful exercise for me to realize, and it's actually an exercise that requires discipline, and we have to keep on doing it. And what I realized is that we have is it better for me to talk about the process, or would it be better to spend maybe 5 minutes taking people through it to see, so that they could get a small taster so they can know how to do it themselves?
Oh, yeah. If you could take us through it, that would be awesome.
Okay, so if you're listening to the call, I just want you to take a minute and put anything down and just get comfortable in your chair and take a deep breath in and out. And just feel yourself being present in your body. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to bring an image of your loved one to mind. Now, I am aware that for some of you this might be incredibly difficult because the pain that you're experiencing might be overwhelming. But what we're looking for is we're looking for that memory, that event that is really full of love. Whatever that moment is for you, that moment that when you think about your loved one, it really connects you to the love that you feel for them. And whether that is, you know, a graduation day that you might have had, or your wedding day, whatever it is for you, hold on to that memory and that emotion and feel the love. And as you keep on breathing in and out, just notice how that love feels within your body, and just allow it to build. And I understand that this might be difficult at first, and you might waver even if you hold on to the love. Your mind might be coming up and going, there's the love, but they're dead, they're gone, and it might be pulling you back to the pain. And what you need to keep on doing is working, focusing on this love and allowing it to build within your body, and just sit there and feel that love, that connection, because that love that you have with your loved one will be with you forever. It will never die. It will never leave. It is yours. It is a gift. And know that any time you are feeling the sadness, the pain of the loss, that you can bring yourself back to this moment of love, this moment of connection, this moment of joy. And all we need to do now is to know that that is there, that is within our heart. And we can really bring ourselves back to the call. So just give you a moment to regroup. And I am aware that that was a very, very short introduction to the exercise. And you might have to play with this a few times to get it right. But what I realized as I did this exercise myself, that when I would have those moments of grief and the pain would come up, I would focus on that love. And it became so much part of me, of focusing on that love, that one day I had this shift where my brother popped into my mind, and instead of even a twinge of loss, the first thing I thought about was that love and that connection. So this is something, and I say this, I mean, it took me 11 years to master this. So it's not something that it's going to happen overnight, but consciously bringing yourself back to that place of love, bringing yourself, reminding yourself of that connection there. The more you do that, the more that you will be training yourself to think of your loved one with love and moving into that place. And it does become easier over time.
And also, you're saying, it took you 11 years to master. I'm kind of complaining that it took me 10 years to find that secret, let's say. But with the wide availability of help, like through Tabitha or even some of our other speakers as well for the bereaved person, I think you can master some of these techniques much quicker because now there's experts who can run them through you, like Tabitha, go through this transformation, learn these tools to really help yourself feel better. And even for the grief professionals and psychotherapists and other people listening on the call, there's a wealth of information in Tabitha's book, in this exercise, from some of our other speakers. So I'm so encouraged and inspired that this help is available, that people don't have to suffer quite long.
Yeah, and I mean, that is, again, I think one of the gifts out of all of our own personal experiences from everybody speaking on this telesummit, Chelsea, is that we can pass on our wisdom so that other people can spend less time in grief and more time in life, more time in love, more time in happiness and enjoying life. And that is a beautiful way for me to look at it, to think that this is a gift that every single loved one that we have had is offering to everybody else so that they can get the benefit of this wisdom and really move beyond their grief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you're such an expert in teaching people how to do that. And then, for the five steps for the tree of transformation, I did have a question initially. Sounds like you have a pet, like I do.
Yep.
For the, we're talking about Western society versus Eastern. We're so busy, blah blah blah. Can you kind of talk about the differences a little between Western and Eastern? Like, for example, in your book, I believe you said, like, Buddhists take so long to actually mourn the grief, as well as the Jewish population. Like, they have real long rituals in place, at least to start the process. So could you just tell us a little bit about some of those differences? Because when in Western society, I don't know that we're always so familiar that there is a different way, because we're not taught that way. At least the layman person who just lost someone doesn't know all these things. Yeah,
and it is incredibly interesting because one of the things is we've moved away from such an emphasis on religion within the Western society as we've moved into a notion of individualism, we've lost the rituals that actually support us. And one of the beautiful rituals that we used to have, which I think originated from Ireland, was actually the process of the wake. Now, what people might not know is that the reason it was called a wake is because they weren't very good at knowing when people had actually died. So what they would do is they would put them in the coffin and have a party. And after that party, they would reminisce about the person. They would either wake up or they wouldn't, and then it would move to the next stage. So we've had our own rituals that we have lost as death has become more efficient, as we've moved it into hospital and made it neat and hidden it away from us. Whereas in a lot of the Eastern religions, and as the one that you mentioned within the Buddhist, and there is a beautiful book about this called the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, which is a wonderful read for anybody interested looking at rituals. And they would have...
tell us the name of the book one more time. Sorry to interrupt. Can you say that one more time? The
Tibetan Book of Living and Dying.
Okay.
And they talk about the whole process of how death happens, but also the rituals that they would have in place afterwards. And they would have very specific periods of time where you would do things. It's also the same with the Japanese ancestor worship. They actually believed, and I don't know how accurate this is now in their modern life, that they actually believed that the spirits of their loved ones stayed on afterwards as basically protectors of the household. So in order to ensure that they stayed happy, we had to keep on making rituals and offerings. Now, this was for up to 50 years after they died, so it wasn't just the loved ones that you immediately lost, but it was also the ones before them as well. So that gives us an idea of how long these rituals can have. And I know that in China as well, they had rituals where you could go to places and make offerings. And there's just a lot more recognition of the fact that they continue on in some way afterwards, and we have to honour and recognise that. And I think, I'm talking off the top of my head here, but I'm sure it is I'm just trying to think, is it the Islam culture, that they have a specific time period where you do not leave the house, and people will come and support you with food and everything else, so that you have that specific time for your own grieving and your own mourning. So it's really interesting when we look at different cultures and see the ways that they have had in order to support the people who are still alive, who are still here through that process. Whereas, as I said, we have lost that to a certain extent. And I know that within the British culture, we very much have a stiff upper lip, let's not show emotion, on you go, tally-ho type thing. And that has been in effect to our detriment, because we've ended up not knowing how to move through grief.
Mm-hmm. And let me ask you one other thing, and then we can get into your points about what you need to know to thrive after loss, and the
challenges. Yeah.
But I have one other question.
Mm-hmm.
In your book, you talk about how people oscillate, or how they move in between. You're kind of in the grief one moment feeling awful, but then you can oscillate to the other side of it where you're happy, joyful. And I know there's certain researcher who developed this, who you reference in your book. And I know that was a huge revelation for me, not yet understanding or knowing that research, that yes, you do oscillate in between these phases. One minute I'm like, oh, the next minute I'm happy. So that was just relieving to me, I guess, to know, yay, this is okay, this is how it happens. So can you explain how that works a little?
Yeah, now this was a wonderful model. It's called the dual process model of coping with bereavement, and it was developed by two Dutch researchers. I think their names were Margaret Strobe and Hank Schuck. And what they did is they actually went out and observed bereaved people and looked at their process, and they found that we moved through basically like a pendulum swinging. At one stage we would be in the emotional stage, the reminiscing, the tears, the really taking time to go and internal and process what it meant for us. But then we would be able to swing to the other stage, which would be us readjusting to life, taking action, recreating our identity, going out, enjoying ourselves. And what they find is this is a natural process. And basically, it's only when you get stuck in one or the other that then there's the potential for problems. If you're all the time stuck in the emotional side, then you're not really readjusting to life and starting to move forward. But if you're always moving forward, then you're not processing the emotional side. And this is kind of key for anybody who's listening out there who actually says, oh my goodness, I can't go and enjoy myself because my loved one died. And a lot of the time we get caught up in this. And this is actually the challenge that it comes for us moving forward through bereavement, is that the stories that we tell ourselves about our loved one and about our loss can actually prevent us from moving forward. Because if we're telling ourselves, look, I can't go out and socialize, I can't do this, I can't do that because my loved one died, then we're not allowing that natural process to take care. Alternatively, if we're actually saying, well, I need to be crying all the time, I should be feeling sadder. And this is something that's come up for a few people that I've spoken to. They've actually said, I'm actually quite worried because I'm not as upset as I thought I would be. Is there something wrong? And that, again, is a story that we're telling ourselves because we're all different. We're all going to experience our emotions differently. So as long as we're moving back and forward, everything is fine. And I think the days come where we spend more time reorientating than we do in the emotional aspect. And the way that I like to think of it is there will become a time when we are in perfect balance, where we are able to move forward with our life, but have our loved ones there and be able to hold on to them from that place of love. And for me, that is the equilibrium. So it is really important when we're looking at moving forward through grief, the stories that we're telling ourselves, because it's even if we spend a lot of time focusing on their death, if their death is particularly traumatic, then we're getting caught up in the negative, the painful part. Whereas we can shift with the whole exercise that I gave you earlier on, we can shift into that place of love, which is a better story to actually have. So that is the biggest challenge that we all face when we're moving through grief, is being able to let go of the stories. And sometimes they're not even our stories. I know that particularly for women who have lost their partners or men who have lost their partners, we have the expectations of society that can come into play, where if you start moving forward in a short life and maybe engage in having some opposite sex companionship again, that other people can be judging you, and then that can cause problems within your own grieving process. And that's their story. That's nothing to do with you, because it's really important to realize that there's no rules. You know, it's different for each and every one of us, and we do things that feel right for us, but it's important to make sure that the stories that we're telling ourselves are supporting us moving forward, rather than preventing us from moving forward or allowing us to get caught up in the cycle of guilt and shame over the death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really helpful, and I like how you explain the pendulum, moving back and forth. That's such an easy way to understand. Like you hear people saying the waves in and out, but I totally understand the pendulum, how you swing to both sides. Then also when you're talking, when you use the word should, you know, we're telling ourselves stories. And my red flag is whenever someone says, I think I should be doing this. So the should, that's someone else's story, or that's a limiting belief you picked up. So just a little tip, whenever you hear the should, total red flag, really think about what you're telling yourself. So yeah, thanks for explaining that. Yeah, now tell us, what do we need to know to help us thrive after loss? Because I know you've spelled this out really well in your book.
Well, again, it's going through all the parts of the process. But to really thrive, what I've realized is that a new life is waiting for all of us after loss. And it can actually be better than the one that we've had before. Again, that might be incredibly difficult to hear, especially if you were really happy with your loved one. That your life has become enriched because your loved one both lived and both died. And that feeling of connection will really nourish you and support you as you move forward and you thrive. And thriving, I talk about, as in the book title, the peace, the passion, and the purpose. You know you're thriving after loss when you are able to experience peace over the death of your loved one, when you are able to feel passionate about life again, and when you feel as if you have a purpose. And for some of you on this call, it might be sharing your story to help and inspire other people, or it might be something completely different. But these three things, the peace, the passion, and the purpose, for me are key elements that you know that you're thriving after loss.
Mm-hmm. And I think, too, just from my personal example, I know when my mother passed away, I was 28. I felt like I was cracked wide open, and I've heard other people kind of use those same words to describe it. And when you are cracked wide open, I think all these limiting beliefs just fly out of you. And I think that's the closest you've been to your authentic self, probably since you've been little or since you've been born, your real, true essence. So in death, in loss, you do have this gift opportunity, again, the hard word to hear when you're new to it, that, oh my God, this is the real me. Now I know what really matters. I really know what's important now. And it's unfortunate that some of us do have to go through death to realize this. But again, it's a gift that you were able to realize this. And I think through your work and other people's work as well, we can get to this purpose and passion without going through this experience, if we can get to other people who haven't gone through that. But yeah, I really agree that we really can find those things. Just because they go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's a really beautiful quote that encompasses what you're talking about from one of my favourite poets, which is Khalil Gibran, The Prophet. I would say that this is the most powerful book. This is the first book that I read after my brother died, and it has a beautiful example of, talks about joy and sorrow, which is really beautiful. And the essence of that is look to what gives you joy, and you'll find that the same thing that gives you joy is the same thing that's causing you sorrow. But the quote, when you're talking about the breaking wide open, he actually says, your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. And that really summarizes up, because I've too felt as if I was cracked wide open, and my understanding about myself, the world, and everything was shattered. But from the ashes, if you think of a phoenix, from the ashes of that pain and destruction, we are able to come alive again and burst into a wonderful blaze of energy and light, just like the phoenix.
Yeah, that's really neat.
So can I just say a little bit more about how nature would be able to help support people on their journey?
Yes, and I was just thinking too, and then I'll let you continue. The reminder of what you did with your how you spread your brother's ashes, and then what happened when you spread them. Maybe you can share that as you're talking about how nature can help us.
Yeah, that was part of my intention, so I'm glad you reminded me of that story, so it didn't go from my mind. Basically, I know you yourself, Chelsea, said you have a love of nature. I have a love of nature. There's so many of us out there that have a love of nature. But what we don't actually realize is that from psychological perspectives, there's a lot of research out there that shows that just going out into nature can actually reduce our stress, reduce our anger, reduce aggression, and even reduce depression. So it's a wonderful tool to actually go out there. But also, as we go out to nature, we're offered the chance for a reminder to see the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. And this is where the story that you're talking about that is in my book that I share. Now, my brother, I don't know if he had some kind of foresight, but he had a belief that he wasn't going to live until he was past 20. So in the 2 weeks before he died, he actually told his friends where he wanted his ashes to be scattered, which is in this lovely part of the woods, close to the village that we grew up. So we went and we did this, and we took his ashes and we scattered them everywhere. And what was really like one of the most beautiful, amazing things is when we came back 2 or 3 days later, part of the place where the ashes had been scattered, all these little red flowers had sprung up. Now, I have never seen them since, because I go back quite a lot to visit the place, because I find a real sense of peace in the woods there. But for me, it was such a powerful recognition of the fact that life does go on, and if we are energy, then that energy is just transformed. And for me, that was a beautiful physical example. There was my brother's body, it was transformed into ash. We put the ash onto the earth, and the earth somehow transformed it into these beautiful small red flowers. And that for me was just incredible. I mean, I honestly cannot explain how that happened. But it was just a beautiful reminder. And when we do go out to nature, we are able to find that solace that we need, and really give ourselves that time and energy to heal, while we're being supported by nature. And one of the things that I love when I really think about it is that physically my brother's ashes went into the earth, and the earth surrounds me. So sometimes how I like to think of it is, well, those ashes went into the earth and they are everywhere. You know, they're part of that earth. So when I go for a walk, I am surrounded by my brother, just in a different form. And I get such comfort from that, knowing that, yeah, my brother is everywhere. You know, he is one with the earth. And by going out and going to nature, no matter where I am, whether I'm where his ashes are scattered or not, or if I'm on the other side of the world, wherever I am, I can connect with him through that processing of taking a physical step and seeing how it works. So yeah, it's not just the whole research that is showing it, it's the ability to really see death in different light and see it as part of this continuous cycle that is going on, that always has gone on, that always will go on, and that we are part of it.
And I know you have gorgeous red hair. Did your brother? Did your brother have red hair too?
No, he was. My mum used to laugh and say she thought that people would have thought that she was having affairs with the milkman, the
yeah.
delivery man, and whatever. I had red hair. My brother had this sandy blonde hair, and then my sister had dark black brown hair. So we were all very different.
Well, I was just wondering because I thought, oh, the red flowers. Because I knew you had such pretty red hair. I thought, oh, maybe the red symbolized. Did the red mean anything to you with the red flowers, or they were just the growth? I didn't know if the red had any symbolism to it.
No, I mean, I think in terms of red for symbolism, if I reflect back on it now, red is the color of life and vitality and passion.
Oh,
and
sure.
That was maybe just the symbolism behind that. It was more incredible and amazing that something like that had happened, because it was physical proof that, for me anyway, that we are transformed into a different energy, and that energy can be continued on.
Yeah, and my brother-in-law, my husband's brother, passed away about 5 years ago, and we spread his ashes. He's an avid deer hunter, and so we spread his ashes near where in the country where he always deer hunted. So, and I hadn't been back to the spot, so I went to ask some of my husband's brothers to see if they saw any growth there. Just, I was just curious, to see if they might have had that experience. I'm thinking they didn't, just because I hadn't heard them talk about it, but different type of family, not as doesn't communicate as well. So I think I will have to ask him that question. But I thought that story is just beautiful, and it just so explains the tree, the tree of transformation process.
Mm. Yeah, and I would love to know if any of the listeners have ever had this experience when they've been scattering ashes as well. Because I surely cannot be the only one who's experienced something what I would call special and magical from that experience.
Yeah. So then I got you a little off track here. So then you're talking about nature, and what other things did you want us to know about thriving after loss? I know we're starting to get towards the end of our time here.
I think the most important thing that you, the listener, needs to know is that it is possible. And not only is it possible, but it is more common than you think. And one of the beautiful things about this Grief Tele Summit is that you are getting the examples of people who are showing you that it is possible to transform your grief and to rebuild a new life. And that is the most important thing that you need to know. It is possible. Wherever you are now in your grief journey, it will shift and it will change. And it does not mean that you will ever lose your loved one, because they will always be with you in your heart, however you want to choose to think of how they will be with you. They will always be with you, and you will be able to face life again with renewed enthusiasm, with renewed joy, and the capacity to connect and get out there and have a meaningful life and, inspire others just in the way that you've done it as well. It is possible.
Yeah, that is such a strong, important message. And in your book, you have lots of examples of women who have thrived loss, so that's inspirational too, to hear all those stories. And also I find it interesting that your work has evolved so much from helping people with grief now to helping them more transform their life and their businesses. Do you feel your work simply has evolved because you've evolved as you've grown, I would imagine?
I think it's been a combination of both. I mean, I am really passionate about making this world a better place. And I do believe that the pain and suffering that we go through is one of the biggest things that is holding us back from really having the most amazing life, but also working together and creating this world a better place. And I realised that throughout the 12 years that I've been on this journey, Chelsea, that I picked up a lot of skills about business. And also it's incredibly different to start creating a business when you're using your own personal story as the vehicle for helping and inspiring others. And that, again, requires you to step up to another level, and it requires you to heal and transform on an even deeper level to be able to be comfortable to do that. And there's certain things that I have learned that are not good things, and certain things that I've learned that are key if you are creating a business around your personal story, where you have you're sharing your own transformation so that you can help and inspire others. And I realized that I was able to offer this as a gift. So it is a deeper evolution of my work. I am able to then now help those who are ready to use their personal story as a tool for helping and inspiring others. And I can show them the way of how to do it so that they can get out there and they can keep on making a bigger difference. And it's just like what we're seeing even within this Tele-Summit and what we've talked about throughout the continuation of the call. When we were, saying it took me 11 years to master, my own grief transformation, it took me 10 years. That becomes quicker when we have the people who have gone the process, who know what to do, who don't know what to, and what to avoid. And that is something that we all need. The more people that are standing up and sharing their stories of transformation and saying, look, I did it, it's possible, you can do it too, the better the world is. And I know that I have enough skills now to help support them do that in a way that's easy and effortless, and avoiding the the pitfalls that come with really being so vulnerable and sharing such intimate details of your life with other people.
Yeah, I think that's awesome that you can share your gift that way, because so many people do have meaningful stories, transformative stories that will help others move through their pain, their trauma, their loss, whatever happened to them, quicker through the tools that you have, other people have, to be like, yay, I don't have to suffer. I can get through this. I can have a wonderful life, and I can share my gift with others. So that is so awesome. Kudos to you.
Thank
and
you.
Tell me, too, I think you have something on a Google Hangout that you wanted to share with everyone on the call. So tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a replay of a webinar that I did, and it is for anybody who is out there on the call who's thinking that, yeah, maybe they would like to share their own personal story of transformation as a way to help other people. And it really gives you all the key things that you need so that you can shift through that fear, doubt, and uncertainty that comes with sharing it, and what you need to focus on when you're sharing your story. So if that resonates with anybody, they can go to www.tabithajane, and JAYNE /hangout, and they can sign up and they can get access to this webinar, and they can get everything that they need so that they can start sharing their personal story with others.
And the actual name of the webinar is called "What If the Worst Thing That's Ever Happened to You Could Also Be the Best?" And again, it's just at www.tabithajane.com/hangout. Again, Tabitha is spelled Tabitha, and then JAYNE, as Tabitha said. So I just wanted to make sure you all could check that out if that is of interest to you. Tabitha's book is called Thriving Loss, and you can learn more about it at www.thrivingloss.com. And again, I'd highly recommend it just simply because of all the tools that are in it to get you to the passion, purpose, and peace after loss. I just had read the book again after reading it about 3 years ago, roughly, and it's just brilliant because of all the tools that are in there. And like all of our speakers, we're trying to bring these tools to you, both as the bereaved person, as a professional, to have a bigger arsenal, a bigger toolbox, so you can get through your grief, heal it, thrive, as Tabitha says, and go on to live a great life in legacy to your loved one, but also knowing that connection, that love still lives on. And also I should mention, too, with the volume of speakers that we have, all the recordings, if you can't, or all the calls, if you can't listen to them live, they are available up to 48 hours afterwards, so you can tune in at a time that's more convenient for your schedule. And then also, too, we do have them for purchase if you decide, wow, I really want to have these tools so I can re-listen to them again as well. And Tabitha, thanks so much for your time. We very much appreciate it. You're a huge help, and again, kudos to you for all the work that you're doing to help everyone.
Thank you very much for having me. It is my pleasure to have been here, and if what I have shared can help one person move beyond their grief, then it's made my day, basically, so thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I would agree, and somehow I think we'll be helping more than one person, but I hear what you say. If even one person can be helped, totally worth all your effort, correct? That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, Tabitha, thank you, and thanks to all the listeners, and then we hope you will join us at our next session as well. Thanks again. Take care, everyone.